Welcome to 60 Skills, and tonight we're going to do something a little different. We're going to review a book that you can't actually buy. This is a very interesting work and is one of two translations into English by the author Peter Dexheimer. It is on Energywork, and specifically this involves the work of Franz Barden's third book, Key to the True Kabbalah. Now, Peter Dexheimer has a somewhat controversial view on how to go about performing this exercise. Now, the book itself is no longer available in print. For a while it was available as a Kindle. However, as you can see, there are other places you can go to get this work. Now, what's interesting about this is he gives comprehensive guidance for performing the letter work from Barden's third book, but he does it in a mantric or very different way. Now, the first part of the book goes into his theory of how to do this. It gets into his personal philosophy, and this can be interesting to read. However, what's more interesting about this is when we get to the section on guidance, where it begins to teach a practitioner how to actually work with the book. Dexheimer himself recommends basically just jumping straight into it, although he is very particular about the language used in terms of pronunciation. I would strongly advise reading his entire book from front to back. It is, quite literally, one of the most fascinating works on the subject I've seen, and one of a handful on the topic, aside from the book that I've written and Barden's own works. Dexheimer himself is a bit of a mystery, and no real information can be found on him. Now, his cycle for making this work involves intention, imagination, emotion, doing or conducting an action, and then having something. So he stresses the importance of the mental image of what you're looking for, and more importantly, the emotional connection to it. Without a strong driving force, things simply don't manifest. I've generally found this true in magic, and it is also very helpful, he points out, to only focus on one thing at a time. So he goes through a bit of this, and it goes on for quite a while. He then gets into his theory regarding the proper conditions for energy to work and how this functions. It is, in word, fascinating and well worth reading. Now, where the rubber really begins to hit the road happens very shortly in the book. And again, it's a short book. Now, Dexheimer wrote several of these, but again, only two were ever translated in English. The German books I've had a hard time finding and really haven't been able to do much with. He also describes the universe from an inside-out type perspective, and this also matches very well with the works of Franz Barden and the 60 Skills curriculum. You won't find any real surprises here. What he does spend a lot of time on is sound vibration and giving a practitioner a basic set of daily formulas to work with. The three most important are DC, DS, and a JHW combination with a couple possible varieties depending upon what someone is attempting to do. Now, he is very specific about the pronunciation to be used, and for non-Germanic speakers, this is well worth reading. He also has a very interesting method of counting using the different rings on the fingers. So this is also worth reading, even though I myself don't really use this. He also talks about the importance of the 4-6-2 consolidation. Specifically, he mentions that ideally you would do 4-6-2 at least 3 times. Now, he has a series of basic formulas. Like I said earlier, the basic 3 are DC, DS, and JHW. However, he also gives specific value to the CK, EF, and EK formula combinations as well. He also gives a very handy practice schedule in order to do this on so that you can get all of them in. As a general rule, DC, DS, and JHW are the ones that you should do daily. And then he alternates the CK, EF, and EK ones as needed. he gets into a very interesting writing on the uses of these different formulas, and this is slightly different from what Franz Barden has. So listening to another practitioner describe what he's doing with, say, DC is really important. So he recommends doing these for a minimum of 15 minutes or so, or in a prescribed pattern such as 4-6-2. I've generally found I can do DC, DS, and the JHW combination all in about 30 minutes while walking. This seems to work pretty well. He also talks about how there are typically some physical side effects from just jumping into this. This I can, in fact, corroborate, and will note that it's simply something that has to be worked through. In my case, it consisted of a sore neck and left arm for a few days. Now, then he gets into the issue of how to use DS, which again, this is a more specific information than you'll find in Franz Barden's works, and a bunch of issues involving JHW and its different variants. Barden does talk about these, but he gets a little more specific about it. Now, also, he gets into the CK combination, the EF combination, and the EK formula. After this, he gets into a variety of very specific protective formulas, which seem to be something that he likes to spend a lot of time on. All I can say is the EN formula should be well experienced and used by most practitioners. That said, there are other things that you can work with, such as CT, ER, or EO. Be very careful with EO, as it can induce quite a bit of karmic backlash if you're not careful. So he gets into a bunch of stock formulas that he likes to use, and this provides a little more information than is typically available in Franz Barden's books. Now he also has a list of rules, which I think is really nice, because this is really just a list of precepts, and these are important when you're working with this kind of thing. And he has about 49 of these. Now, the book itself is fairly short. What does become interesting is his formula reference afterwards. There are hundreds of combinations in this book, and these are sometimes giving uses that are not fully spelled out in Franz Barden's work, particularly 3 letters such as DDD or 4 letters such as GGGG. A lot of this you can figure out on your own, but some of it is quite counterintuitive. For this reason, if you're involved at all with formula magic, I'd strongly advise going over this. You may get a few extra steps that you can throw into your magical toolkit. And these are quite profound in some cases and quite developed. Particularly the 3 and 4 letter issues, some of these may be hard to figure out for a lot of people who lack experience or the prerequisite clairvoyance and clairaudience. That said, just being able to read these is an interesting exercise. My feeling is that if someone had properly developed letter magic, they could actually go through the entire book, evoking, or as it is, invoking, every single combination in the book for a moment or two. I think this could result in some interesting development on the part of the practitioner. Now, the categories are pretty good, and as far as I can tell, the translation from German into English is actually a good one. That said, other people may have different opinions, and if you read good German and have access to the original books in German, I would love to hear from you about any differences that you noted between them. That said, this is basically written as a spell book, or something that is to be actively used, versus something that is to be used as a shelf reference. Most interestingly, for people who are interested in medicine, there's a section on remedies where they go over a variety of uses for letter magic. If you were involved in some kind of healing arts, I think you would find this very, very interesting. Now, he also mentions the need not to intrude upon the will or life of other people using this because of karmic backlash. What I can tell you is that is a very real thing when using letter magic, and not something to be taken lightly. And of course, with every work that I like, he has a very handy formula index. He also has an index by function. And so this makes the work quite handy. Dexheimer is someone that I would love to meet, but like a lot of practitioners, he seems to come out of nowhere, give what he cares to give to the community, and then disappear back to his life. So Peter Dexheimer himself, if you're out there, I would definitely love to hear from you sometime. Otherwise, to everybody else, I'd highly encourage your acquiring a copy of this work in a manner that seems suitable. Otherwise, train hard and be well.